With H.P. Blavatsky, we're talking about things that were said over a period of really from 1875 to 1891. And so she made a lot of comments about the scientific understanding of that day, really expanding that view, because what she did say was that the atom is infinitely divisible. At that time, that wasn't revolutionary, it was deemed ridiculous, because the atom was the ultimate physical particle beyond which there was no possible subdivision. But she described it as more of an energetic phenomenon. Again, the same idea finds itself reflected over and over again, that matter and spirit, or matter and energy, are continually interlinked at every point in the universe. So this was the sort of thing that she described, and that the atom itself was conscious. Consciousness is not something that was deemed to be only something that humans possessed, but that everything in nature has a consciousness of a certain level and is also influenced by and participates within greater consciousness. So the atom was, the atom as the human being, as the universe, was seen to be part of the same sort of network, the same sort of grid of consciousness. There's this idea that everywhere that we look, everywhere in this universe, there are centers. And from the point of view of the person who is focused on the unfoldment of consciousness, the statement's made, a consciousness whose center is everywhere and whose circumference is nowhere. It seems as if what was being pictured in this sort of language is this process of the outgoing nature of consciousness, that it radiates or emanates from a center point, and that always it emanates in much the way that we view it in nature. If you drop a stone in water, it moves out in this circular pattern, but it also moves to a certain depth, and it also affects beyond, above. So it's always this spheroidal view that provides some sort of image that can be helpful in terms of trying to understand the workings of consciousness, as well as the formation of everything from ideas to beings to universes. Many symbols are used in the spiritual traditions of the world to depict that which is without end and that which is without beginning. The most common one, of course, is the circle. The circle speaks in terms of the totality, and very often we encounter this particular symbol. It's a symbol that you find in both Eastern spirituality as well as Western, of a snake swallowing its tail. The idea being that the beginning and the ending are always interlinked, and it also expresses the idea of universes and the human condition as something which comes into being and then has its period where it is swallowed up, and then it has its period of being remanifested. So the beginning and the ending are, in essence, always found in each moment. And so the whole process that is engaged in the spiritual path, which is one of the quest for liberation, you could say, can be found in this same symbol. In considering the way the human being functions, there is this idea that there are various centers of consciousness within the body. Oftentimes people speak in terms of the chakra system, and that each of these centers is the mediating point for various degrees of energy. So we think in terms of, generally, in contemporary view, we think in terms of the brain as being the predominant, the boss of the body and the boss of the life, that consciousness is resident somehow in the brain. Contemporary science would say that it's actually created in the brain, that somehow or another the electrical impulses and the chemical changes that take place produce consciousness. Obviously, that's a limited view. Probably a more useful image would be much like the a television set where we have a particular physical instrument that if you turn it on and you turn it to the proper channels, it shows certain sorts of programs that nobody today is so unconnected with how things work as to think that the television produces the programs. Those are out there in the atmosphere and it only receives. Similar thing with the brain. But in terms of what might be spoken of as the spiritual impulse, H.P. Blavatsky and others have spoken of the fact that the heart really is the organ of spiritual perception. A lot of experimentation today is focusing on the actual physical organ of the heart. Its electrical field is far greater, far stronger than that of the brain, and there are certain sorts of ways in which it has a cognition that exceeds that of the brain, and that the information that flows through the body to the brain from the heart is greater than what flows from the brain to the heart. So it's something that's being substantiated more and more, even when we think in terms of the physical organ of the heart. Obviously, the heart as the organ of spiritual perception also goes beyond just the mere flesh and blood that comprises the body. There's more to it as well.